Sources. I thought I'd show you kind of the current sources of revenue that we have. So right now coming in, we have some the state money, some school readiness money. This is targeted for 3- and 4-year-old preschool programming. We have early learning scholarships. This is also state scholarship that's comes in for, and it's income qualification. So our families need to qualify for that. And this comes in 2 different ways. One is Pathway 1 scholarship, and those scholarships are attached to children. So once that child gets that scholarship, it follows them through any program that they go to, and they can attend any parent aware rated program. So even if they were to leave Invest early, that scholarship would follow them. And then it also includes Pathway 2 scholarships, and that a lump sum that comes into districts. Grand Rapids gets a significant amount of funding from the state for Pathway 2 scholarships. ECFE funding comes in to the district, and this is all for targeted at early childhood family ed programming. And so that is based on the 0 to 5 census that gets turned in that we turn into the state each year, and then the funding for the following year is calculated based on that. So it's important we try to keep up those census numbers pretty closely so that we can maximize the money that comes in for family ed programming. We also have BPK funding in Grand Rapids. So that's voluntary preschool funding. We only get that in Big Fork right now. We have 15 BPK seats right now that come in to 318. We are just in the middle of applying for, the state has opened up a bunch more seats. I think it's 5,800 additional seats that they'll be allocating across the state. So we're in the middle of applying for that. I'm hopeful that Grand Rapids can get a few more seats allocated. It's based on, there's a formula and a rating system they have. I think the last year with the increase in the free and reduced forms that were turned in, I think that will help the application somewhat because we got some better numbers for that free and reduced numbers that came in. So we'll see if that helps at all. And then obviously the blending grant that is about half of our funding is right now is blended grant funding. And then other sources are just some additional outside grants, parent tuition. We do get some early Head Start funding that comes into our infant and toddler programming as well. And that's with the partnership with Kutaska, but it's federal dollars that come in, but it's a pretty minimal amount for the expense that infant toddler programming is.
Darla, I'm going to ask my question. Maybe you'll get into it later, but how many kids do we have in each one of these categories?
Yeah, so I do, if I can skip ahead here to that. So this is the makeup of just early childhood classrooms with Invest Early, just the number of classrooms. I thought I'd show it by district so you could kind of see across Itasca County how Grand Rapids sits as far as the number of classrooms. So you can see there, and then enrollment wise, it's pretty much the same breakdown 318 has. So when you look at just 318, this is the breakdown of what the classrooms look like. About half of them are 4-year-old classrooms. We just have the one infant toddler classroom right now that's combined infant and toddler. So it has 16 slots right now, and then we have basically 16, 12, 22 3-year-old seats right now. So does that answer it, Pat?
Yes. Any projection on next 3 to 5 years on those numbers? Are they going up or stable?
Well, the actual population, I mean, the census seems to be going down some. This year we had a decrease in the number of 4-year-olds. So we actually filled with more 3-year-olds this year just because the programming was already set, the classrooms were already set. It seems to be the trend across the 4 school districts. The number of 4-year-olds were down, so I anticipate the K numbers Next year will be down a little bit as well. It seems to be the trend across the state, and I don't know if it's just a blip in that year, or if we'll see. We have quite a few 3-year-olds. I think we'll know more this next enrollment period. We just opened up January 1st, so we'll get a better idea if it was just a 1-year blip or if it's kind of a trend. It seems to be, some are saying that its population right now is kind of an inverse triangle, so we'll see if that. We kind of thought there was a trend with COVID that maybe the kids were out there and we just hadn't accessed them. But for this year, for whatever reason, the number of 4-year-olds were down.
Thank you.
Darla, you said we're in year 19 of the blending grant, which provides half the funding. Is it a 20-year grant? I mean, how many?
Yep, 20 years. So
Okay.
this will be after this year. So June 30th, 2025 will be the end of the.
Okay,
of the-
so there's like a
yep,
year
little
and a
sunset.
half kind of left.
Yep. Year and a half left.
So I don't know, question for you, Darla or Matt, where are we at as far as moving forward once the grant is completed? Thoughts on?
So we're doing, I mean,
What's it look like?
we've been working really hard at kind of analyzing the budget, trying to figure out, what other revenue sources we're working. We have working with a grant writer. We gone into a partnership with the business of childcare. It's Jeff Andrews. We just signed a contract with him just to really be looking at, what are our options? How do we engage others in the community? What are other funding, some revenue sources that we could access? How do we reduce our expenses, and kind of really working on what's the cost per classroom, so that as we look at reductions, and what can we continue to offer based on the funding that we have. So that's what we've really spent the last 18 months doing. So.
The other thing, and Darla, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there have been some decisions made and already implemented to stretch those dollars farther, because Blandon was more or less saying, here's what we've committed. If you spend that over the next 6 years or 2 years, we don't really, you do it. So there were some low enrollment rooms that were closed down, some infant and toddler rooms that were reduced. So programming across the Investorly footprint was reduced, some changes in summer, and I don't remember all the details, but you could talk about like after school care, extended care, maybe you get into that later, but some of the
I can bring
things
it
that.
up now since we're talking about it.
Being part of the IS board, to just say there were a lot of changes even in contracts and how staffing went that will have long-term impact, but that they worked really hard this year to make sure we could do similar to some of our own contracts for sustainability purposes.
Well, it's just, for all that's been invested in the program, it's starting to feel like we're gonna be going backwards here, and it's just disheartening on it. And it's always chasing money to do a core service, so to speak, but.
So just as you asked, we're talking about some of the changes that happened in 318 this year. We obviously had to move all of our programming that was in the admin building. And so we combined our infant toddler classroom, and we have a classroom at St. Andrew's Church right now for those that classroom, 2 classrooms at Minnesota North, which I'll talk about as some of the partnerships that we have. 1 classroom at East Elementary, 1 classroom at West Elementary, and 2 blended Head Start classrooms up at the Murphy Hub, that are partnership with Kutaska. Some of the changes that we made this year, just looking at extending some of that funding so that every dollar we save now, we can access it on the opposite back end. But we eliminated morning extended care. It was something that was really underutilized. So originally we had been staffing from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. And the numbers for we really looked at the cost of staff and the numbers that were using it. It was really underutilized for the expense. So we eliminated morning care. We changed our drop-off time a little bit to accommodate families so that it wasn't that they couldn't drop off till 8. So we staffed them starting at like 7:45. So there was some wiggle room for families to be able to get to work. And then 4-year-olds that can access busing. So that helped some of those families too. And then the No Friday Care, extended care, our program remains Monday through Thursday. So there isn't Friday care for preschool, and that decision was made based on staffing. We had no staff that would work on Fridays. So that was just because of schooling and other, conflicts. So we weren't able to offer that Friday care. And then programming changes coming for the next school year, so fiscal year 25 would be infant toddler programming. It will end on June 30th, 2024. So there'll be no infant toddler programming in any of the 4 districts. Extended care programming will end at the end of this school year as well. So that after school care piece in the afternoon, which is like 3 to 5 p.m. right now. And then the summer programming will not be offered this summer as well. So those were some of the adjustments that were made in order to
So in a broader picture, that's going to put more strain on just childcare as a whole throughout the community. Then.
yeah, absolutely.
Wouldn't you say, Darla, kind of having been involved in some of the conversations, there have been some changes that when they were originally talked about, we thought there would be a lot more pushback or whatever, and people have just kind of figured some things out, it seems like. And I haven't intermittently been involved in those conversations, but
Yeah, I would say, it was when we looked at whether to offer summer last summer, and it was, no, we needed all the family. Yep, we need it. So we offered it, we staffed it, and then when it came to it, we would have days where there was four kids that would attend. And so it was, it was really inconsistent, and it's hard to staff for that. And Greenway this year, because of not being able to find staff, we didn't offer any extended care after school or Fridays. And then for a few families, it is really a hardship. But for the majority of, they did figure it out. Is it ideal? No. But from what the school is able to offer and staff, it's hard. So these are some of the partnerships right now going on in 318. We partnered with Minnesota North and 318 Early Childhood Special Education to do up some blended classrooms at Minnesota North. They're kind of a lab preschool. And so we collaboratively staff them with Invest Early staff, with 318 special education staff, and then some work study staff through Minnesota North. And so there's 318 special education students and have a higher staffing ratio for special education staff out there. So, and then we also then partner with Cody Geisler from Minnesota North and her early childhood development classes. And so her students, as they're taking classes at Minnesota North, they come into our classroom to learn specific lessons and do activities with the kids in there. So that's been a really fun partnership that we've started this year. And also looking at, whether or not we can partner with some other departments on the campus. So one of the things we're also doing is their engineering. One of their engineering design courses is working on, they're going to do a redesign of the playground out there to make it more accessible. So their students actually chose that project. They saw the playground and decided that that was something they wanted to do for their project for the semester. And so we're just starting that now. They're starting to design as the semester started. So we're kind of excited about that one too.
If you get a chance, go see it. It's a really cool space. They've done a lot of work there. It's a really neat space.
So we're continuing to partner with Pulaski Head Start on enrollment and all of our training and programming. We have the 2 blended classrooms that are 3-year-old classrooms up at the Murphy Hub. So we have 2 that are team taught with Head Start and Invest Early staff. And so we have 8 3-year-old slots in each of those classrooms. So we have 16 investorly students that are up there at the hub. We continue to partner with Grand Rapids Library, so we do a weekly story time with our ECFE staff that they go to the library, and then we have a staff that works with Tracy Campa from the Grand Rapids Library, and they do an online story time that has been started because of COVID, but it got a really good turnout on that, so they continue to do that one, and families seem to like that as well. And then just across ISD, we've been really partnering with all of our early childhood programming. So we've tried to look at where we can include Floodwood, Hill City, and Northland Reamer with any of the trainings that we're offering. We've been looking at preschool screening and how we can work collaboratively across all the districts. Each district is required to do early childhood preschool screening. So there's a duplication across each district. So we've been, Jackie, Skelly, Melanie, DeBay, and I have been working on, and some of the area principals have been working on how we can create just a IS-wide system for that to make that more efficient and easier for districts when a nurse transitions out of a role. It's really hard for the district to pick that up. So we've taken on that this year and just continue to look at early childhood across all 7 districts on how we can continue to make things more efficient and sustainable moving forward. We looked at these already. Early childhood family ed is, we've been trying really hard to kind of boost that up a little bit this year. So last year we had 180 participants that took place in either some of the outdoor classes or just the regular parent and child classes where they come in. And we've really worked, our ECFE staff in 318 are really excited, and they've been really looking at how they can change the offerings that we have here. And so when these numbers were pulled, it was just November. So our hope was to really increase some of the participation in the classes that are offered, and kind of, we've been kind of trying to look at the attendance on classes, and there's been some that have been offered for a long time, but the attendance isn't real great. So we've been looking at how we can change it up to engage the families and get those numbers up a little bit. I think that we're really excited for some of the space here. I think that we'll have access to some other space that will allow us to offer some different things like the gym and that outdoor space here as well, that we'll be able to do some fun things. So. And then this is just some student data. We've really worked hard in the last year of starting to collect some really student data, again, coming out of COVID, that had been real hard to get and had really fallen. So we've really looked at this as just one specific assessment that's done, and it's one of the ones that kindergarten teachers like when they're coming in. So it's the letter sound proficiency. So this one, the first pie there is the when students came in the fall of 2022. The green is the number that are on target or proficient in their letter sound, and red is they're far from target. And when we reassessed in the spring, that's what the data looked like there. So significant improvement in the number that were proficient, and also a reduction in the ones that were far from target. And really the last thing was the changes that we already looked at. So questions?
On the first funding one, the big book has 15 seats for BPK.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that they have seats but no one?
It's all based on the free and reduced numbers when they were they were originally with that original legislation. It was that community had different numbers than Grand Rapids, and so they were allotted them, and then they were part of the first round, so continue to those were like solidified into legislation, so they continue to get them. This is the first time that additional seats have opened up to, and so, that we think we could possibly get some bigger.
It was almost like a grant the first when it
Yeah.
originally went in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was free or reduced, and I think geography was a part of the equation too.
Kind of like sparsity aid type thing.
Rurality and how far you were from.
Yeah, how far you are from other like parent aware rated programs.
And now you said they're increasing them, and so then we can find out if you,
It'll be spring. Yeah, the application goes in the end of January here, so it'll be spring.
So the unique thing about that program is when those kids essentially get counted just like kindergartners. And so they're generating
Funding comes in.
funding
Same
just
level.
like,
oh,
they're generating capital revenue. They're generating long-term facilities maintenance revenue. They're generating all the categorical aid that comes with a kindergartner. So
we
it's,
might get more, hopefully.
Do you get them based on seats or does somebody actually have to occupy the seat?
They have to occupy them. Yep.
They have to occupy the seat. And how many do we have occupying the seats in Big Fork? Are they all
This year we
being
weren't able to seat all of them because they can only have one funding stream. So BPK is one of the funding streams. Early childhood special ed is another funding stream. So they could be in a VPK seat and then they qualify for
Qualify
special
for-
ed and then
They
then
lose
they
VPK
lose
funding.
VPK and slide over to,
Ah,
and the VPK slots are only funded at a 0.6.
Oh, okay.
So it's not a
Okay.
full,
It's not fully funded.
it's not fully funded. It's fully funded if you're not a full day program, I mean,
Sure.
so I think that's why that was that 0.6. Yep. And where early childhood special ed is funded at a 1.0, so.
So it's better. there.
Well-
So when you start looking at,
money-wise.
Money.
I'm just,
Yeah.
if you're doing all day and, I mean, really, if you're servicing a child.
So what we do is we try to kind of blend those streams, so they could be VPK and depending on the number of hours. So then we can switch after we've maxed their VPK hours, then we can switch if they have a pathways one. Then
Sure,
we'll
okay.
we'll backfill in to maximize as much funding as we can for the time, because it all is based on the hours that they attend. So
Okay.
do a lot of moving around in order to.
Darla, do you have a read on how it's going at East and West that you can share?
I think it's going well. I know that, I know that a lot of the families that were really intentional of the children that we placed in those classrooms. We really looked at the application, looked at who had older siblings in the building I think families have appreciated it. I haven't been over there a lot, but I know that the staff have,
Yeah.
the staff we placed there were also staff that had worked in other companies at Cohasset, Murphy, or Forest Lake, so
Sure.
they were used to
Being
operating in an elementary building, and so it's gone well. Ideally, it'd be nice for them to have a second room in each, just to have a partner. I think they can feel a little bit isolated, just because they're different than the rest of the school, and then even to cover for staffing when we have someone out,
Sure.
it'd be easier to slide between rooms instead of around buildings. But it's been nice to have space there for sure.
I heard that they participated in the first quarter PBIS celebration at East, and I wasn't there to observe this, but that Bruce Goodwin was asking, I need it at a level 0, which means no talking, and the preschool kids knew the rules, like they knew the rhythm. They knew that meant not to talk, and they were right on board. And that's the beauty of the model, is that the kiddos learn the routines and they know where the lunchroom is and they know who Mr. Goodwin is when they're 4 years old, and so there's a lot of good that can come out of that.
Any other questions or comments?
I would just say that Darla and Jackie, and working with them, they're just stellar leaders, and they have, like us, have had to work through some really tough stuff creatively. And these are two women who are really leading in that space. And I would just, for sure, because they don't get enough credit sometimes. I don't think, they're the quiet leaders. And so I would just say thank you.
There's been a lot of untangling and you know, figuring out to do. Darla's been doing a great job.
Appreciate the work.
Thank you. Good report. Thank you. Thanks, Darla.
Thanks, Darla.
Stay warm.
And when you're coat, Justin hat.
Yeah, take off the Berkeys.
That's so.
I actually had to bring when I brought my twins back to Chicago this last weekend. And Callie didn't have a hat and mittens. We had to go buy her a hat and mittens.
Oh.
Chicago, it was
Yeah.
40.
Yeah.
Guess we're going to party.
Yeah.
Do we want to do the tour next?
Yeah, let's just do that. Yeah, if that's all right.
I forgot they were in Chicago. Griffin said they got like a foot of snow and like 5 inches of rain.
Really.
Yeah, he's just like whatever, 20 minutes north of Milwaukee or whatever. He's just like it's treacherous. And
What
for
came
him to-
first, the snow? Then the
You
rain?
didn't, you know what? I didn't ask. I'm not sure.
I hope the rooms are unlocked. Is the room gonna be unlocked?
She said they would be, and there is one class in progress, but they know you're coming and she welcomes you.
Yeah.
So, but I can walk with you. I have a key and just in
Okay, good.
case. Yep. I'm just gonna stop the live stream.
We just thought it'd be good for those of you that haven't been in that area or seen that space to kind of see where the tech hub is gonna be. And see how that community workspace is gonna be.
I was in weekend, then did you get to stay down?
Give them something.
You did. Like you just never knew. It was like walking on eggshells. I said it was like when all the pieces of the puzzle just are like, oh, no, I know.
Next item on the agenda is finance report.
Yeah, Kara was double booked tonight, but what she was going to share was just the general fund revenues and expenditures document that's in your packet or in your materials. This is the same document that you saw or we used when we went over the budget with respect to the reductions. So it's just an update here for you. This is the format that I think you'll start seeing this more regularly in. Any questions about it that I can answer or relay to her? All right.
Ready to move on?
Yeah.
Yes. Mid-year progress report on school board goals, Superintendent Gross.
All right. Julie included the school board goals in your packet, and so we're going to take a look at those, and then item E there, the collaboration update. So I went through the goal list and kind of marked off how, in green up here which ones were completed with, which ones are in progress. I can tell you up front, there's none that we're not at least acting on. All of them are in progress. Some of them are sort of ongoing, but just starting with number one, you approved the operational plan in November on the 14th. That is moving ahead, of course, and that I brought copies of that again in case you wanted another look at it. But actually, I'll keep the set store here. As we're going through these, you can reflect on how what we're working on fits in the context of this. And as I get into some of these other items, you'll see it more explicitly. And we've talked about this document a number of times during the course of the year. You've seen this quite a few times leading up to November and after. As far as some progress after or around these goals, our strategy team. So we've got a team of individuals, administrative as well as teaching and learning side, as well as Carol Copps there from a teaching lens. And we've talked about even adding an additional teacher there, but the strategy team's job is really to take the operational plan and give it some legs. And so that strategy team has identified 5 projects that we're going to be working on or are in the process of. The first one, and you know, Anna's kind of stepped up to provide some facilitation. She's really good at this kind of work. And so let's see if I can do this. For each one of these projects, we've developed a kind of a project planning document, and it goes through, it starts with what strategic direction does this relate to? So if you come back to the operational plan, objective 1 is about identifying areas with disparities. Really what we're focusing on first is ensuring that our assessments are being administered with fidelity, because we're quite certain that we have a lot of variability in terms of the degree to which those are being administered the same. So we kind of call this testing conditions, but in just ensuring that we're using best practices with how we're delivering these. So if the message that I'm giving my kids as a third grade teacher with respect to the math test should be very similar, the same as the one that my next door neighbor is giving. Because if my third graders aren't taking that test seriously, then the data we are getting doesn't accurately reflect what those kids know and can do. And so the first thing we decided to do is let's just make sure that we've got common expectations and things like that. So what that looks like carried out is a procedure checklist for technology, all these individuals. Some of it has to do with scheduling. So one of the things we're going to start doing this spring that hasn't been done before is ensuring that the person who, if I'm I'll back it up. If I'm a 11th grader taking the 11th grade MCA, I'm going to be taking it in the same room with the same teacher that I get 11th grade math instruction from. And it's not because they're going to be telling me answers. It's because I'm going to be in a familiar environment with the person who I have a connection to with respect. And those things matter in terms of how a kid feels about the assessment. And then on the teaching side, what has to be in place? What kind of language are we using? How are we prepping kids for this test? If we have some people saying, well, it's not a big deal. If we have some people saying this is like the Super Bowl of our,
Right.
we've got a big disparity there. So there are some things with technology that we want to have checked off and that kind of thing. So this is a work in progress here. And then how much training do we need to have in place? So each one of these projects has this document that identifies who the lead is, who's on that team. It's a cross section. The team isn't just strategy team people. It'll include a multitude of people, teachers, in this case, Heidi Claremont, she's our district assessment coordinator, things like that.
Has this been shared with staff yet, Matt?
Not to this level of detail. Once this gets done, as far as when we're ready to operationalize it, I don't know. We haven't talked about like sharing this like playbook here, but the rest of it will all be something that gets public. And then we've also talked as a team, where are we going to house not only this work, but our work around early outs and our work around. So are we going to like try to really train up people on Google Docs so people will know if I want to find it, I go to Google Docs, or will we have a kind of front facing website that provides an easy to see link? So a lot of details still being worked out on this. But in each one of these areas, so that's project one. Let's see what it's going to do here. I think I made it angry.
I like the consistency and continuity it's going to bring. My question is how are we going to handle the pushback if there is pushback?
Well, good question. I think one of the things that we've been really intentional about is starting with a really strong purpose. So when we go into this, we're starting with that, right? Like having assessment results that accurately represent learning is important for students, it's important for parents, it's important for staff. So why are we doing this? And making sure that we're taking time to talk about that on the front end. How is this important? Why is this important? And some people will still maybe think it isn't, but at least we've been clear about why as a district we're putting some gas in this tank.
I would add administration in that.
Yeah.
Space, right?
Right,
Because I mean,
true,
it actually is allocated as important.
Right.
You're spending time and money there.
right. Project 2 has to do with our early outs, our PLCs, and how we're using data. So Jen's leading this one, team there. Again, this one is more a little heavier on the administrative side because it's just about how are we scheduling those PLCs to ensure that our staff can access and use things like EduClimber, like Jen and Ryan have showed in detail. Because what we've been doing, this fall in our first cycle of early outs was ensuring that our teachers could create a data wall, which is a roster of kids that and the list of how they're doing. And then this next cycle 2, it's going to be going into, well, now that we can make that, what do we do with that? How do we adjust to it? So eventually then you can see part of this checklist when the project's done. This is what done looks like. That's what Brene Brown would say. There's a training plan. We've got walkthroughs developed so principals know how to connect this back to the classroom. How am I going to know if it's happening? Because again, we're trying to decrease variability, increase skill here. Project 3, and again, this ties back each one of these cases, and I could spend 10 minutes on each one. Project 3 is school to home communications. And if you look on page 2 of clear and consistent communication, that's objective 2, right from our operational plan. And so this team, and you can see that right up here on the top, what it ties back to as far as our strategic directions. Team, mixture of teachers, myself, some administrators in there. And then again, the purpose here. Why are we doing this? We want to build trust, confidence, engagement, and agency on the part of families. We're going to develop communication actions across the board that are systematic. Because right now we have a super high degree of variability. And if you've had kids in the system, you know that. Teacher A, you get communication from all the time. Teacher B, you get none. And we haven't clearly laid out, well, what do we expect? Yeah, what do we expect? And, and then after we've laid out what do we expect, have we trained people to do that? One of the things that I think will come out of this will be an examination of conferences. Well, I mean, Mark, you can speak to this. The purpose and the purpose, intent, conversation at conferences changed a lot over the last 25 years. When parents all of a sudden have 24/7 access to a student's test results and homework completion, and whether they were in school that day, that means that the conversation at conferences changed a whole bunch. When I was the teacher and I had a red grade book, I was the only one that knew whether Billy had turned in that assignment. Well, the parent knows right away as soon as it's entered. So conferences back then were like, well, Billy's missing 12 assignments. We don't need to talk about that anymore. Parent already knows that, or many parents already know that, not all. But so a big part of this is finding out what do parents want to know at conferences now? And how do we get that information to them? So that's what this group is going to be working on. This is just, this is still between home and first base. They're still working on what the checklist of things that need to be completed. So getting input from families, what changes, again, a training plan for stakeholders. What do people need to know now? If we have teachers and staff that aren't comfortable making a phone call home, how do we equip them to do that? Are we going to build home visits into our communication plan at some point? And if we do that, there's a whole bunch of training that goes into doing home visits. And so really cool, I think really cool work
That's really
here. Again, driven by that operational plan, which was driven by community feedback, stakeholder feedback over the last 2 years. I'm going to go through all these, so I hope that's okay. Universal instructional expectations. This might be called protocols. Tying it back to our operational plan, this comes right off of evidence-based practices. And so you can see this team is broad as well. So this is about identifying a set. And this isn't going to be 35 things that everybody needs to do. This is going to be pretty high level. I talk about this and my drawing skills aren't very good, but when I talked about this last June with our admin staff, how we have this operational plan that's sort of like the trunk of the tree, and then we have our teaching and learning model that's sort of like the big limbs, And then as we flesh these things out, those are kind of like the leaves, and the more detailed we get, the more. And so this is sort of getting out in the branches and the leaves now. But what are those practices that a principal should be able to walk into, a board member, a superintendent should be able to walk into a room and say, I recognize that. It doesn't mean that the way Mark does it and David does it and Ben does it's the same, but I should be able to walk in and go, oh, they're checking for understanding here, and I can see how they're doing it. You're doing it with a whiteboard, and you're doing it with some other activity, and you're doing it with some other activity, but I can see that it's happening. Again, trying to decrease variability so that if I have a student in 3rd grade in this school, it should be the same expectation as a parent of 3rd grade student in another school. These teams haven't met once even yet. The goal, so we're kind of mapping out next year's early out work. So what's happening. So we're planning 8 months out ahead. This group's going to work on what are those things, and then it's going to be about development training, and then it's going to be about planning that training into next year's early out. So this is a far cry from, being in this place where it's like, it's Wednesday at 9 and we're like, what are we doing today? We're thinking about what we're doing 9 months from now on a Wednesday.
Are we getting good feedback from the teachers? I know for a long time there was pushback, I think, because that same thing, like,
Yep.
Nobody really knew. And so I had other things to do. I mean, has that been shifting?
Yeah, I don't think we're not hearing feedback about it feels like we don't know what we're doing on Wednesdays anymore. We're not hearing that. Because it's planned out and it's kind of scripted out. Some of the feedback that we're getting is, well, we don't have as much autonomy as we used to have as a building. I'm not even saying that at the teacher level. No, we don't have as much autonomy as we used to have as a building to react to something that we might need to react to. So we've been soliciting that feedback from teams. And so we're kind of thinking about that too in our scheduling, going, okay, there's going to be a little, what's loose and what's tight.
Yeah.
Tight is the objective. Loose might be some of that scheduling. So Sabres is a good example, our SEL assessment tool. Well, that might take a little bit longer in one building than another building. The outcome is all the kids are doing it. Takes you 2 weeks. You might have an extra week in there to be talking about something building specific, but the Sabres thing is tight. We're not going to flex on that. So that's feedback that we're getting. And I think, we can live with that. It's a far cry from where we've been. And then we're just going to adjust to that the way we need to. But, we've shared the schedule. So everybody knows, like on January 2nd, first day back on that Tuesday, we had it mapped out that the buildings were going to go over, review crisis planning. Every building in the district. Now, I think we had a small variation there, but that was the plan. Everybody could look and say on January 2nd on that Wednesday or whatever the date was, 3rd, I suppose, this is what we were doing that day. And then we're going to go over the schedule for early outs for the rest of the year. And people can go there and look. So it's not a secret. It's mapped out. So there's a lot more predictability to that. And again, I've been part of Wednesday early outs from the very, very beginning. And that was always the thing that led to the highest degree of frustration was, feels like we're making this up at 2:00 on Wednesday and nobody feels respected when that's the case. So that's the fourth project. And then the fifth one is in kind of it's evolved a whole bunch. We've had some conversation at Meet and Confers with different groups about student discipline and that kind of thing. And one of the things, again, that we're finding is that we have a lot of variability in terms of how student behavior is being reported. And we have to have good information before we can make good decisions. So if Melissa is a teacher and she's handling student behavior one particular way, and David is handling the same behavior in a different way, we at least need to know that so that when we're gathering data, we don't have misrepresentation of what's going on. Because what frustrates staff is when we have like well, we only had two major behavior incidents in the last 2 weeks. And they're going, what are you talking about? Yeah. Well, we had 2 reported because teachers were handling it in their rooms or, that kind of thing. So we have to have good, and we have a structure for this already with PBIS. It lays out, these are minors, these are majors, these are classroom handled, these are office handled. So then it's just a matter of ensuring that everybody's up to speed on those, and we're doing something similar all the way through. But again, this ties back to our operational plan when we're talking about data and also the culture. Team is made up of teachers and some admin. This one is still in the, you can see comments, all kinds of in the development stage. But this again is outward looking. This is a 24-25 project with staff. We're planning it, building the road, kind of the on-ramp, so that it'll be ready for liftoff. The plan then, once this gets developed, it'll get trained out. The principals will get trained up on it, and then on how to lead this out next year first, and then we'll kind of move through. But before the school year's over, we'll be able to lay out for staff, here's what you can expect next year. So I'm really proud of this. I'm really proud of this work. And, we've got some people on the strategy team that have really dug in. They're doing a good job leading. So it's really good.
So Matt, there's a lot there,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. And what's our end game or end timeline as far as full implementation? Is it like 3 years out, 4 years out? What do you think?
Well, so the timeline depends a little bit on the project. So the testing conditions project, number 1, in time for MCA is 2024. And then that'll just become our normal operating procedures moving forward. Like, this is just how we do assessments, and not just the MCAs, but when we're doing our benchmark assessments, same. Because again, if I'm a teacher and I'm doing this benchmarking, the more accurately the kids are taking these tests, the better I have information. So that one's going to be this spring still. The second project this spring still. That'll get, we'll be training on that this spring, training staff. That'll be a skill set that they have, and then we'll work when we're onboarding new staff. We'll embed that into our onboarding. The other 3 projects are next year, skill building and implementation.
What's really cool about how you did it is if I'm looking for a funding source to help
Sure.
pay for any of this,
Yep.
whether that's for the kids or for the staff or whatever, it's written. I
Mhm.
mean, you've
Yep.
already written it, and it's a collaborative document. I mean, I'm just thinking of small little things that you could go and pay for
Mhm.
grant money.
Well, again, I appreciate the work that's gone into this, and I appreciate the fact that there's going to be expectations on staff on where we're going and what we're doing, and to get to that consistency and continuity moving forward. I think it's so important for staff as well as for students.
And I can't overstate just the role Anna's playing in this. I mean, when I talk about a sheet like this here, she has an incredible ability to synthesize and, visualize this type of thing. And she tied, so I'm sure she's not watching, but I want you to know as a board, like, her leadership in this is invaluable. It's absolutely invaluable.
What's kind of so cool is we focus a lot on the budget, and we have. But behind the scenes,
Mhm.
there's all really, really
Yep.
good things. And so it's kind of that, how do you begin to share that with the
Mhm.
community, that even though we're cutting here, here's all of these
Mhm.
things that we're working that we've never had before,
Mhm.
that teachers have really kind of committed to still doing for
Yeah.
you, your kids in the community. And that seems to be a story we have to figure out how to tell.
Yeah, and to turn it around too, that, we talk about the parent to home communication piece.
Yeah.
That came from them, right?
Yeah.
Like, we heard you. I mean, we don't do a good job of communicating that way, right? Like, we asked you, you said this.
Yeah.
We heard you, and we're getting better. So I think that will be a good story to tell, and we have to, we tell it along the way too, but I'm excited about that.
No, I think this to me goes to, and Mr. Schroeder said it best, is stop thinking about who we were before and trying to go back, but who do we want to be building
Mhm.
forward? And it feels like these are building blocks in that foundation to whomever we want to be going forward.
And part of what we, part of the muscles that we have to build new muscles. And, the metaphor I use too is like, we have ruts. Every organization has ruts that have been driven in a million times, and we need new roads in some cases to just fill them in. But we have to build new muscles and also get good at developing systems. So it isn't just a one-off. We're adapting. None of us have that are at the table, that are a part of the planning, have been in a situation where we're doing this exact thing. So we're having to adapt too. But what we want to be in a place of is that when we come to our next system to build, we have a pretty good process for doing that. This is how we handle it, continuity. This is our project plan. We're going to start with our purpose and how does it tie back to this? Because if it doesn't, we shouldn't do it. So we're learning too, which we should be. We should be a learning organization. We are a teaching hospital. Second goal was about student achievement. This is in process. This is going to show up on the 2024 MCA results. What I can tell you is if you go into buildings, you're going to see 6% goals everywhere. If you talk to principals, they're going to see 6% goals in there. So the goals set here have made their way into buildings. So that really is in the future. 3 was about a referendum. It's green because we did what we set out to do. The results just weren't what we wanted them to be. Science of reading work is continuing to move forward. You've heard a lot about that, so I don't know if I need to go deep into it. But what I will say is that right now, Ryan and Jen are doing a lot of looking at the READ Act. The state in the last 3 weeks has rolled out what assessments they're going to sort of bless, and what as of just in the last couple of days, what curriculums are going to be eligible for reimbursement. That's important because we need to purchase an ELA, English Language Arts curriculum. There was some surprise a little bit about what was on the list and what wasn't. There's a reevaluation option for some curriculums to companies to sort of go through. I can tell you Wit and Wisdom is on the list. We use that in our middle school. Carol Kopp's a national trainer in that. And so that's something we're going to look at. It's a knowledge-based curriculum, and I should send you a link to an article about that. But one of the things they're finding in English language arts, especially, is that and kids learning to read, is that many kids don't have the background knowledge, and often that gets in the way of them learning how to read. So they don't. The example in the article, I'll send it to you. I think you'll find it interesting. But these kids in middle Michigan are reading words about hurricanes. Well, they have zero context for that. And so how do you build knowledge with the kids about hurricanes? So when they're encountering the concept of a hurricane in a passage, they can make meaning out of it. And there's been, I think, pendulum a little bit too much focused on skill, not knowledge too, to bring that along with it. And you can go all the way back to No Child Left Behind, right? I mean, and what got cut out of the curriculum as a result of No Child Left Behind? Social studies and science. So the social studies and science mostly, right? Well, kids don't know a lot about the War of 1812. They read a passage on the War of 1812 and they're supposed to have some make meaning out of that passage and they have zero context. It's tough. So anyway, I'm saying all that to say that we are interested the most in knowledge building curriculums. And I'll send you that article and you can take a look at it. But right, we'll see how that plays out. I just talked to Ryan today a little bit and we're trying to figure out the timing of this because an ELA purchase is a big expense. And how to line that up with what the state's doing, like what our immediate need is, because we really don't have a curriculum. So our teachers need one. Do we jump out now knowing what we know? Or do we wait and let this play itself out a little bit further with the state, knowing that there could be reimbursement there for more curricula than are currently listed? Because I'd say one of the ones that we were really interested in is on the reevaluation list. And it'd be a less expensive curriculum to implement. And it doesn't mean you can. We could still select it. We just couldn't get reimbursement for the material. So
Matt, on the reimbursement, is it 50 cents on a dollar, 100%?
I don't know how they're going to do it. There's a set bucket of money, set dollar amount, and that money, it's one bucket of money. You can apply for reimbursement through the next, fiscal 28, I think, or until it's gone. So I don't know if they're going to proportion it out or do some kind of per student thing. I don't know that that's clear yet. So Ryan did a great job of leading staff and had a staff person kind of step up to lead through a science adoption. I think he's, today he was talking about kicking that group off, even though our outcomes might not be totally clear yet, but at least starting by getting the group together, getting some background knowledge on what's happening with the READ Act, what the state's doing, what we need to get some feedback even about, as teachers, what would you prefer to do? Jump by something now or wait and see how this plays out a little bit? Can you make it another year with what we've been doing? So working through that. MTSS efforts, I don't really have a lot to say about that other than, if we go back to what I shared about developing a data wall, that's an MTSS effort. Your support of that, our continued investment in EduClimber, that software, effective and consistent timelines and systems. We had one of the things that I didn't know was as important as it is, but I've learned having all of our students assessed in a particular window is very important to keep the data clean. We had over 90% of our students assessed in that window across the board. So that's a huge change from previous. So that's good work by principals and Jen and Ryan and Anna and kind of leading that effort out. These timelines are important. We're going to stick to them. And if we miss them, why did we miss them? And what can we do to not have that happen in the future? Collaborative partnerships. I'm going to dig into that one next. So I'll skip that one for now. And then the communications plan. I haven't talked about this in a while, but we've been busy with it. I have a copy of it for you to look at. That's a paper copy. And then also I'll hand this to you. I'm not going to go over this tonight, but you can take a look at it. Been working with Colin Solokowski for Mounds View, their communication specialist. He took a look at qualitative information that we had out there, including that untapped survey. He did some interviews internally. He talked to you about, some things, I think, some of you. And so put together this communications plan. What he thinks we should focus on next. And then he and I talked about some next steps, some priorities. And this is kind of just for your information. We can circle back to it, but I wanted to make sure that you knew that we this is yellow for a reason. We've got some work done here too. So you can take a look at that at your leisure, but as far as updating where we're at with that, that's where we're at with that. I have talked to him about what I feel like is probably our most pressing need, and that is to develop a communications plan or a narrative or begin telling stories to build confidence and trust, in the school district. Like that, to me, that's our biggest communications need at this point, is to continue to build confidence and trust in what we're doing. And
The
so
only way to
what that looks
combat-
like.
It's the only way to combat the national narrative, because right now the national narrative is controlling everybody's communication.
Right.
I would argue, I don't think anybody's doing this really well.
Yeah.
Spot on. Why don't you take on that job?
No, no, no.
Do you want me to just move right into the collaboration update, Mr. Chair, since that was kind of number 6?
You bet.
All right. So 2 things I just wanted to update you on. First is what's happening with IASK, and I've got 3 handouts for you. This is the last one. This is a report from Fred Nolan, who's been paid for mostly through a grant from IRRR. There are 2 activities that were identified as kind of the focus on. Again, this kind of originally started with Nashwauk. We opened it up to other districts. Greenway got involved as well. And the 2 areas have to do with scheduling and calendar. So our principals have been talking about that. We originally back in 2000 and single digits or whatever it was, probably, the principals got together and developed a common bell schedule. Calendar kind of is aligned as well. We've talked about that. But to revisit that and go, is that bell schedule still serving us well, and what we need to change if we're going to do better, especially as we want to look ahead to share curriculum. And the second activity that was identified by the group is to develop some common mentorship and onboarding and that type of staff development type work. So that's another group that's been meeting, and you can read that update in there. The second piece with IASK, IASK leadership has vocalized the need to go a different direction with their fiscal host. It's been Deer River for a long time. There's been a lot of turnover in Deer River, and so I think that's been part of the challenge. And when we met at the IASK level, no one volunteered, stepped up, whatever you want to say it, to step into that. I talked to staff here, and our staff here are willing to do that. And so we're kind of proceeding down that path to take on the business office for IASK. In both of these cases, for item number 1 and 2, I believe that there's an opportunity for our school district to improve our budget position by taking this on, and also serve our own employees better by segregating duties more, and also doing some restructuring. So Nashwauk-Keewatin has had some things happen with their business office. I won't go into any more detail than that, but they've approached us as well. And we've had a number of meetings. Our staff are actually helping them out right now because they don't really have, a business manager or anybody doing payroll. So we're doing that, billing for that, because it obviously shouldn't be coming on our cost. But again, combined with IASK, both of those present an opportunity through contracts to increase revenue for the school district here, helps our budget position. Along with that, we would add some staff using those funds. We'd still come out better from a budget position, but we'd add somebody on the HR side of the house and the business office side of the house to take on some of those duties, again, paid for by the funds that we would receive. Both of those funding sources are predictable. in terms of, we know what the arrangement was between IASC and Deer River. It's public. And so we know what we can count on there. Same thing with Nashwauk and Keewatin. Our business, arrangement would essentially replace the cost for them. So this isn't new money that either of these organizations are having to come up with. So what I'd anticipate you seeing next are fiscal agreements. And then at the same time or shortly thereafter, an approval to post a couple positions that would be paid for by those two funding streams. But like I said, the two objectives I think that are within our reach with this and are improve our budget position. And the second thing is improve our service to our own employees.
So Matt, there's some IASC employees at Deer River, right? Or are there Deer River employees that have IASC duties?
Let's see. So Invest Early is the largest group of IASC employees. Outside of Invest Early employees, Invest Early employs a special ed director / executive director. They're purchasing technology services and leadership from us now in the form of Chris Larson. So they're not doing that. So no,
There's no employees over there
there's no employees over there. The people over there that were doing IASC work were part of the arrangement that IASC had buying business services from
Okay.
Deer River. Yeah.
Okay.
At the board table, at the IASC board table, there was a conversation around whether you could split duties between business and HR, right? Could you take one and give one to one school and take the other? And really, when it came down to it, to take those two pieces away, it really had to go as unit to be most effective. And so there were conversations around, could you break out IASC and kind of business accounting? And when it came down to it, the IASC board kind of said, no, they really need to stay together. So.
And from, 318 perspective too, this isn't something that, I know that's been a concern because I've been around a long time, but it's been a concern that 318 being the biggest district was trying to wield some sort of, but in this case, I'm made that very, very clear to the superintendents that I'm open to this going anywhere. And none of them were in a position to do this. Or had any interest in it. And so we have the space. I think we have the kind of the infrastructure to build on. Our staff are doing a great job right now, just kind of picking up the slack. And again, they're working extra hours that we're billing for and getting paid for and things like that. But ultimately, we need to scale up in order to accommodate this. In both cases, there'll be a contract in place. And Nashwauk Keewatin has expressed interest in this being at least a 1.5 year contract. And if it works well, to keep going. I ask similar, but the two staff that we would bring on to help with these two places, they would be funded by these arrangements. And if the arrangements went away, we would have to scale back the office. We'd need to make reductions there. So couldn't afford to pay for new people, especially when we're talking about reductions. The only reason we would be able to add staff would be because we're coming out in a budget position ahead by doing this.
Kind of important to note that both the IASC and the Nashwauk collaborations would be win-wins, not only financially, but also staff-wise.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the things we've talked about is looking for efficiencies and looking for ways to improve services. And these are both good collaborations for us.
I think it's important, and I shared this with you before, Matt, but for the rest of the board, that we talk to our staff about what's happening here with this so that they don't get the impression that we're laying workers off, but we're adding to the administration aspect of it. So it just creates a bad rub.
Right.
So they mean open and laying the cards on the table, I think is important. With that being said, and I don't know how many new school board members are out there in regards to the IASC participating schools, but I think it's important that there's a communication on why this is happening. I know there's representations, but how well that gets brought back to the respective boards so that there isn't a misstep someplace along the line. Oh, look, Grand Rapids, you know, the big dog here taking over us, et cetera, whatever.
I know Jackie's really good about getting out to the board meetings. We just haven't invited her here, but she does go out to quite a few of the board meetings, and even if it's just via Zoom.
Well, I think you do a great job in keeping us what's happening at IASC. Again, I don't know what's happening at the other schools, so I just say that as a caution, you know, going forward with it. Make sure that whoever is communicating with them on why things are happening, why they're happening. And obviously we got an election coming up in November, not knowing what's going to happen in November. You could potentially have new board members coming in January. And I think at that point in time, it's important to talk about the IASC and why IASC is and kind of the historical piece of, geez, why are we sending this money over here? You know, and not really understanding that concept behind it.
So let me ask you this. So 318 will hire. Will they be a 318 employee? And if so, how do we handle if we bring on another employee and all of a sudden they're in a unit, I'm assuming. So that position would get cut, but maybe not that person.
Correct. Yep. And
So
we've,
just being honest about that because of the unit they would fall in. If there was anything odd, so somebody left for some reason, you had to fill that position, we would let go of the position, but it might not be the same person.
right,
that would
depending
go.
on the language in the bargaining agreement, there could be some shifting that could go on.
I just think that's important because sometimes when we cut positions but keep people think we didn't let them go, but really we did let a position go. It's just that person had seniority enough to kind of hang on.
Yeah.
So just kind of a thought.
It's good clarification.
Yeah.
So Matt, you talked about segregating some of the duties. And I'm going back to the contract aspect of it, and I don't know if it's appropriate, but I'm going to throw it out there. Are we giving ourselves the option of right of assignment when we're going to segregate those duties? I understand and why they want to segregate the duties, but for whatever reason, Mark leaves and we want to put Mindy over there, but Mindy's over here doing these. And do we have the right to assign Mindy to that work over there, or is it going to be a union piece that Mindy would have to apply for that work over there, even though it's in the same unit?
I think it could be a combination of both, depending on whether the positions fell within the same unit, or, you know, some of the restructuring that we're looking at results in positions that change within current units, positions that are added to current units, positions that are removed from current units across a couple different groups. You know, we, in our HR and our business office, we have individuals that work both in the secretaries group as well as the directors and coordinators group. There's people in those offices that are in one or the other. And so there'll probably be some of both. I think that, you know, yeah, there'll be some of both. There'll be some positions that we post and people that are real qualified for those because they may have been doing a lot of those duties before and things like that.
Again, for me, my comment is that as much as we can hang on to on the right of assignment, I think we're better off in the long run, operational wise.
Great. Well,
Yeah, I think a big piece of this is looking forward to see what do we want to look like as a district going forward. You know, how are we going to structure things to be efficient? And, you know, as we face kind of the financial tightness, we need to know that we're spending the money, we're structuring things the way that will be efficient going forward. And I agree with Pat, you know, we need to keep managerial rights in place as much as possible.
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Any other comments? Any other business for the board?
I got Mark sent me a thing everybody else was on.
Data breach letter?
That was, my daughter got one and she was 14 years ago that she worked here. So it's
Deep.
deep.
Wow.
So
I know they've been dealing with,
If you're gonna litigate that, that means everybody here would get free credit report, free, you know what I mean,
Well,
for
that's-
like the next
that's-
few years.
that's what we got.
Yeah, that's because it was lit, they already,
Yeah.
they got an attorney's advice. That was coming anyway, right?
But that's my oldest daughter. She's almost 40. And she worked when she was 18.
Oh, wow.
well,
So you can see where
They went back.
they went back. Good thing I'm broke.
Anything else?
You got money.
Matt, I just appreciate the work that you and the staff.
Yeah,
This
that's
is
great.
this is really great stuff. So, end game of the continuity, this is the consistency and expectations, and it's really great.
Meeting's adjourned. Go home, stay warm,
So good.
put on your hat, gloves.
Right? I have
Winter
my
boots.
ugly mom
And
coat,
boots.
you know, it's kind of like,
sandals.
it's kind of like the expedition. Like never in my life did I ever think I'd spend so much money on a car that's just a big giant rectangle and
Yeah.
it's not even cute.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, it's functional, right? It was functional.